Hey, ladies and gents, and welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, episode 163, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. As always, I'm joined by Jordan.
Hello, Jerrad. It's great to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure always.
Yeah.
The person who never wishes me welcome to the show, Dom.
Oh, shit.
Oh, the delayed of us, part 2.
Well, you do ask me to
Whoa.
praise the sun every week so there's
Yeah.
that. It's not a welcome.
He's giving you
but it's-
reminders.
Yeah, true. I guess I'll start. I have a bevy of things to talk about, so I can run through them. So,
Oh, good word, too. Bevy. Nice.
yeah, bevy. Drove my
Hit
Chevy
me with
to
a
the
bevy.
levee.
Hit me with your bevy shot.
So we didn't record last week. Some things came up, so we weren't able to record. So over the last 2 weeks, I've played a bunch of Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. And then the last, at 10 last night to this morning, to us recording, I've played some Call of Duty Modern Warfare as well as The Outer Worlds, which I'll talk about both of those.
So they just released at 10?
Yeah. I played...
Okay. I thought you were saying you have played those games
Oh, God.
straight since that time last night.
Yeah, I wish, man. Back in my youth. So Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair is obviously Playtonic's follow-up to Yooka-Laylee, which was a 3D platformer very much inspired by the Banjo-Kazooies and Donkey Kong. I'm trying to think of, Country is a 2D, right? Or is Country the 3D?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
You could fool me.
64, I think, is the 3D one, but I'm not sure. I'm not well versed in the Donkey Kong lore.
So, yeah, it's very much inspired by the 3D platformers of old.
The Rare games.
Exactly. Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair is the Donkey Kong Country to the Donkey Kong 64, which was the first
2D.
game. Yeah. So to really quickly describe it, the levels are pretty much if you were to take a 2D Banjo-Kazooie game and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze and mush them together, right? The overworld is different than that. The overworld is a 3D space that's isometric, and it's the level hub, and you're going around unlocking different areas to get to these levels to play them. Once you launch into the level, that's the 2D platformer experience, right? One of the really cool things about this game is almost every level has two versions. There's the base version that you normally see on the map, and there's a secondary version of that same level that changes based on environmental factors that you create in the overworld map. So, to explain it, say there's a World 1-1, right? It's normal, it's fine, you play that map. In the environment, in the overworld, there's a switch you can flip, and it raises the water level in that area. So then that unlocks the secondary version of that level, and it's the same level, but it's covered in water, so the pathing in the actual level is different, and there's different things you can unlock, and enemies are placed differently. So it takes the same, most of the same geometry of the first map, but it mixes it up a little bit, and the different types of environment changes are icy or air-based levels, so it takes away a lot of the platforms, more difficult. One of the cool things with the levels too is a majority of them are normal, get to the end of the level, right? Start at one thing, either scroll right or scroll left and get to the end. But then there's these levels that pop up every once in a while that are, you get placed in this level, you can go left or right or up or down, and you have to collect these 5 collectibles. And once you collect all 5 of them, you come back to the beginning of the map and you beat the level. So instead of it being a straight line linear experience, you get to pick and choose which challenges you want to tackle first, right? Because in those levels there's 5 sub areas where you have to get each collectible and bring it back to the beginning. So it switches up the dynamic of the gameplay. What else? The 2D platforming feels good. It's a little floaty, but you kind of expect that in the Donkey Kong Country type 2D platformers. They're meant to be that way. They're not like these precision platformers like a Mega Man or something. It rewards exploration, which I really enjoy. There's underwater sections that you can completely miss if you don't look out for these breakable platforms underneath you that can unlock submerged areas or caves. it's a fun game. I don't think this is like trying to be game of the year by any means or trying to innovate in the space. It just does everything really well. It's great because, you know, platforms like PlayStation and Xbox don't have Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, so we don't really have access to these type of games if you don't own a Nintendo Switch. And this is really, you know, doing it justice on these other platforms.
Outside of Knack, man, they're missing platformers.
Yeah, there's not too much to say there. You have to collect 48 of... So you unlock these bees at the end of every level, and you have to unlock 48 of them to, quote-unquote, win the game or fight the final boss. I have 20 of them so far. Not all of them are acquired through beating the levels. Every level you beat, you are guaranteed one. But there's these, like, puzzles in the overworld that you can figure out that will unlock them as well. And they're pretty sparse. In my total playtime, I have 20 total bees, and I think maybe 2 of them are not from a level. So it's not like you can just like pass all of the levels and do all of these puzzles in the overworld and beat the game that way. I'm enjoying my time with it. It's fun. I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's not like super challenging, right? There's, like with many platformers, especially floaty ones, there's sometimes some odd hitboxes where you don't think something should hit you, but it does. What else? There's tonics in the game. So you can collect these tonics that are essentially the collectibles, and they all do different things. Out of the 15 or so I've collected, maybe 3 of them actually affect gameplay in a positive or negative way. The other ones change the art style of the game, or it's like big head mode where your character has a large head. Little fun stuff. There's one where it makes everybody talk backwards. They're pretty much there, in my estimation, for when you're going back to try to 100% this game, because it is a collect-a-thon-y type game, for you to change up the look of it and make it feel refreshing so you're not seeing the same thing over and over again, right, as you grind away collectibles. I'm enjoying my time with it. It's fun. It's one of the games, like we were talking about before the podcast, Jordan, that I used some of the refund money from Ghost Recon Breakpoint to purchase.
That's right.
And yeah, so instead of playing a broken game that wasn't really fun or enjoyable, I'm playing a wonderful 2D platformer that harkens back to my childhood in many ways. Like, the reason I love this game is there's a good chunk of it that's due to nostalgia of it feeling like, for better or worse, a game from my childhood, right? So, really enjoying that. I've spent the most amount of time with that. The other 2 games I want to talk about, I haven't spent a whole lot of time with, but I did want to mention them. The Outer Worlds. Dom, you had talked about before the show that you're planning on picking it up, so I'm going to be kind of light with story-related stuff. What I will say is it feels like what we expected it to feel like, which is a Fallout game, right? And I haven't experienced any bugs yet. I've only played about an hour and a half. I haven't experienced any bugs. The dialogue system is eerily similar to a Fallout-style game. The way the game feels in terms of shooting mechanics, I feel, is a little bit tighter than Fallout games, but it's not Call of Duty or anything, right? Which I'll get into later. It still is a little loose. I felt the actual ADS and the sensitivity was like way high, so I had to turn that down because you're like zipping back and forth when you're trying to shoot enemies. The guns themselves aren't really fulfilling, but I don't go into an RPG like this expecting that. Like, when you shoot enemies, it does feel a little empty. There's not a lot of feedback, right? It's way different than a game like Doom. I got to the first main city, which is, I believe it's called Edgewater. I'm only in the beginning of it. I've already met a couple of characters. There's like a sick bay and a barber who doubles as the town's morgue. So I'm starting to get the feel of that like Fallout style humor where there's these weird eccentric characters. The beginning of the game is odd because both of you saw the reveal trailer, right, for Outer Worlds?
Yeah.
Where like it's the old guy in front of you and he's talking to you and you're like behind the thing. Very Fallout 4-esque. So what happens is that colony is lost in space and he needs somebody to go and find parts for his ship. He can't land on the planet because he's a wanted outlaw. So he just randomly unfreezes somebody which gives context to the fact that you get to create your character, because it's like he just picks somebody at random. You know what I mean? It's not like a specific character, and then he asks you to go down there. The cool thing I've noticed is, and this is something that Obsidian does really well, and why Vegas is my favorite Fallout game, is they immediately make you feel as if the specs you dive into and you upgrade, like your build, matters. So for me, starting the game, I went with a handgun approach, so my handgun damage does more and it's multiplied, and dialogue, right? So I have a lot more dialogue options of either lying to people or convincing people to do things. So that leads to extended conversations or alternate ways to settle situations, right? And immediately in the first 5 minutes of the game, during the quote-unquote tutorial section of the game, I was able to talk this guy out of a volatile situation and actually got rewarded, and he gave me his weapons and everything, which was really cool. I've noticed even I'm early into the town, right, of Edgewater, and in the conversation I had both at the sick bay and at the barber shop, I was able to get information because the prompts that I had based on my upgrades. And just like any other Obsidian RPG, there's a lot there, right, to dive into in terms of what exactly you want to spec, what improvements you want to certain abilities. What I will say, going into this, I heard that people didn't like the UI. I don't really have a problem with the UI. It's what I expect out of an RPG that's this deep. There's a lot of menus to go through. I personally don't think it's that clunky. The one thing I will say is this is, and I hate to say this because I love this game, and I don't think it'll affect how I eventually feel at the end of it. This is probably one of the worst maps I've seen in a game. It's not bad because I'll say why.
Are you talking about the actual map that you're looking at to pick a place to go, or the map that is the level?
The map that you look at, like the where it marks everything, and you can pick a pin to go to your quest or whatever. It's
I gotcha.
As bare bones as a map can be, right? And I guess if you're somebody who loves exploration and stuff, that's great that you don't really know specifically where everything is.
Yeah.
But in an RPG where there's a lot of quests going on and there's characters you're meeting and there might be a specific location you need to get to, sometimes it being a little bit more detailed would help. In my opinion, going through the game, I think a lot of their time and effort was put into the dialogue and the characters and the writing, and not a lot of time was put into the map or those kind of things. And maybe those things will improve with the sequel, right? Now that they have the budget of Microsoft and the backing, and they're not doing this with a separate publisher, and they can focus more on building a game without the fallout of it not succeeding.
Are we confirmed that they can make a sequel with Microsoft?
Yeah, it's confirmed that Microsoft owns the Outer Worlds IP. Well, Obsidian technically owns it, but Microsoft owns Obsidian, obviously. So.
Gotcha. And how is the overall user interface, since you're talking about the map?
So what I will say is it's not great, right? I'm not trying to, people were complaining about it for a reason. I don't think it's that clunky, and I think you can move through things fine. The biggest gripe for me is that you can equip 4 weapons at a time, whether that be melee or guns, and the way you switch out what weapons are there are cumbersome in the sense of, say I equip an assault rifle, pistol, shotgun, and a sword, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, they're in the slot, and you can switch them with Y when you're playing in gameplay. If I wanted to switch the sword to the slot of the shotgun, I can't just click A on the sword and then click A on the shotgun. I have to click Y on the sword, specifically choose between discard, move to trash, or swap. So then you click swap, and then you have to go and click on the shotgun, and then they swap, right? So it's too many steps. Now, does that bother me? Not really, because I already know how I'm going to set up my guns. I'll never need to move the melee weapon to the 3rd slot or whatever. But
you're not quick
swapping. It should be one button press, right, or 2 button presses, one on the one weapon, one on the other. So it's those kind of things that are. It doesn't make the game worse, but they are these quality of life little things that could take it to the absolute next level. That being said, this game's reviewing exceptionally well. I think it's an 86 on Metacritic, and I'm enjoying it so far. Obviously, I'm only an hour and a half in, but I came into this game wanting a cool RPG experience where I'm getting XP for doing things and some really great characters with great writing and eccentric personalities, and I'm getting that. The shooting combat, subpar, not great. I would say it's better than Fallout, but not, much better. Not too much else to say. I'm enjoying my time with this so far, though, an hour and a half in.
So, combat-wise, better than Fallout 4?
No, I would say better than Fallout New Vegas.
Okay.
I would say 4 has a little bit better handle on it. There is a VATS type system, but it's due to like the way you perceive time since you were in cryo sleep for 7 years. They explain that you perceive time differently, and it's like a sickness you have, so you're able to hit RB and slow down time.
Whoa, dude.
I don't know if you'll get the ability to specifically target individual parts like VATS yet, Dom, because I only unlocked the ability to like slow time, right? So I don't know if that's an ability I get later, but it does have a VATS type system.
But they do have that. They have that combat crutch.
Yeah, it's the thing I like about it is it's not relying on you to so far highlight a bunch of body parts and just it auto shoots. It shows you weak points, and it does slow down time, which I'm thankful for because the combat isn't super great. So at least you give me the opportunity to slow down time, right? So I'm not just getting frustrated. And the healing you can do with LB. That is really useful and is really quick, and you can do that in the middle of combat, and it doesn't feel too cumbersome as well. So you don't really feel overwhelmed.
I'm glad you confirmed what I think we had already heard about the game, in that as you level up different skills, it actually matters as for how you can play the game differently and how quests can be completed. Like that's the one thing that Fallout 3 and New Vegas were so excellent at, and what to me, like, that's a big part of what made those games special. That was pretty much entirely stripped out of Fallout 4.
This game has a lot of paths, like a lot. There's so many different builds you can do. One thing I will say to confirm, it does do if somebody doesn't see you in their line of sight, you could steal whatever the hell you want, which is great. I love that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Dom, to your point, you can play this a variety of ways, man. I'm very curious to see how long the actual game is, and if I ever do go back to it, if I want to do a different build. I did make multiple saves at around the same point after the intro, and there is an easy way to respec your character too, which I forgot to mention. So if you get through the opening area and you're like, I don't really like how my character is spec'd, you can respec your character at any point. The amount it costs to respec your character goes up the more times you do it, but it's pretty cheap in terms of the in-game currency, so...
I'm going to try to avoid that. That's because that's the kind of the thing, right? Like, you show up to a quest and it's like, oh, if your speech, I don't know what they're calling it in this game, but right, if your charisma or your speech skill is so high, then you can just talk this guy into what you want, right? Otherwise, you got to go, run an errand or kill some people or whatever it is. So then it's like, well, I'll just go respec my character and get my speech skill up, get this quest done really quick, and then switch back or something. I guess as long as there's a cost to it, an increasing cost, that would prevent you from like totally abusing that. But that's kind of like the point of, having varied skills, and you can't put your points into all of the skills and do everything every way. There's got to be some limitation.
You're planning on getting, or you have it, right? So when are you planning on starting it?
Probably tomorrow. I'll get some time. I'm pretty pumped. It's already downloaded. Gamecast, baby.
Playing on Xbox.
Yeah, I mean,
on Xbox.
It's hard to beat Game Pass.
Also,
man.
from what I've heard, this game is better played on PC with the mouse and keyboard. Maybe because people have problems with the UI, but I'm having a good time with the controller.
I don't do mouse and keyboard. No way, man. It just doesn't.
I've been going quite a while, so I don't want to go too much longer. What I will say for Call of Duty Modern Warfare, played about 5 multiplayer matches total. I'm very rusty. I haven't played Call of Duty in a long time, so I'm getting... I wouldn't say I'm getting smoked, but I'm definitely hitting about a 1.0 KD. So for every kill, I have a death, which isn't great. But for somebody who hasn't played Call of Duty in a while, I'm getting readjusted to that specific type of multiplayer. The story mode.
Fucking loser. You got a KD ratio of 1.0, bro. What a fucking amateur, dude.
I'm only 4 missions into the single-player campaign. but I would say that this would be worth the price of admission if you can pick it up at Redbox or $20 for a sale or $30 whenever it goes on sale. It is. Let me see if I can explain this properly. Most military games I play for a story mode, it feels like I'm playing a video game that's trying to implement the feelings of what a war movie is. This game feels like you're playing a war movie. So it's different. I would say that this is up there, if not the most cinematic game I've played. It feels like a movie in terms of the cutscenes, in terms of the way things are laid out from mission to mission. It is one of the prettiest games of the generation. I swear, if I had a PS4 Pro or Xbox One X and a TV that could output what those machines are capable of, I would clearly probably say this is the prettiest game I've ever seen. Because I'm playing it on a 1080p monitor with a baseline Xbox One, and I still think it's the prettiest game I've ever seen. It's very impressive. The cool thing about the single player is that whenever you finish a mission, when you go back to the main menu, there's a separate menu for just all of the cutscenes in the game. So when you finish the game, you could just watch all the cutscenes again if you wanted to. So you don't really have to worry about going to YouTube like we do with some games. I think that's really cool too. What else? The game starts off with some pretty brutal stuff in the single player in terms of it's going to test people on what they find too violent or necessary in a video game. For me, I think it toes the line. I think it handles a lot of the subject matter effectively. There's one of the first two missions, you're in Piccadilly Square in London, and there's civilians getting killed left and right, and you have to take out these terrorists. And
Platform 9 3/4.
Yeah, just break all the tension, Jordan. It's awful and it's harrowing, but at no point did I feel like turning off the game or not playing it anymore. It made me, obviously it built into the immersion of the game in a good way for me.
Yeah.
I don't know if that'd work well for everyone because everyone has different thresholds for that type of stuff. And I will say it is pretty shocking so far in the first 4 missions of what they're willing to do in the story. But yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. The 3rd or 4th mission you pair up with
Harry Potter.
With Harry Potter, yes, with Harry Potter. You pair up with this woman from Rikstan, I believe, and she's a female rebellion leader. And you're an American soldier, a different one than the guy that's handling stuff in Piccadilly. And you kind of learn from her about how terrorist activity is an everyday thing for them, because your guy comes in and he's like, we need to stop this stuff that before it happens again in Europe and these different countries. And she's like, well, that's an everyday thing for us. And it kind of gives context to like how we take our lives for granted, you know what I mean, as American citizens of we have to deal with terrorist attacks and activities, but for some people in their countries, just depending on how the political climate is for them and, dictatorships and stuff like that, it's an everyday thing with terrorism. So they're handling it pretty well so far.
Big question for you here, Jerrad. With the story, is it worth, since I'm probably not going to play the game, is it worth going on YouTube and watching kind of as a movie?
4 missions in, I would say yes, but
okay.
Who's to say I haven't even hit the real big like twist or spark for it could all fall apart is what I'm saying. But 4 missions in, it looks very promising. So if what
Definitely
I would say, Jordan, is
like.
It's not a very long campaign. It's only like 10 hours, I think. Wait for me to finish it or whoever to finish it, and then get the opinion of somebody who's finished it, just so that way you're not like, oh, well, the first part of the game sounds interesting, I want to watch it, and then it all falls apart and you just wasted your time, so I would hold on.
Once Harry Potter gets there, it falls apart.
Yeah, with the 6th movie, it just all falls apart. I spoke for quite a while, but I wanted to give my impressions on those 3 games because I'm having a blast with all of them, and hopefully it continues that way. What about you? I guess we'll start with you, Dom, and then we'll head to Jordan. What have you been playing?
So, not all that much, actually. Still been playing Prey from Game Pass. Again, can't beat Game Pass. It's pretty cool. I mean, I'm kind of lost interest, though. I don't really know why. It's just kind of not kept me in. It's like I get what's going on, and I just don't really feel the need to finish it. You know,
well,
probably.
The great thing with Game Pass is you don't really have super buyer's remorse, too. Like, you didn't even,
And I think that's playing into it, too. I don't know. Like, often I feel compelled to finish games that I bought.
Yeah.
At least, the main campaign or whatever they might call that in a game. I feel kind of compelled to, like, at least finish it, and then move on. But this is it being on Game Pass, and especially now that Outer Worlds is here, I'm kind of like, I'm just going to move along. I might go read the rest of the story, but I get what the game is doing. And I don't know, I just don't feel interested in finishing it. It's just a weird thing. It's really cool. It's similar to Dishonored in a lot of ways, where I mean, at least that's what it tells you, is like you can you can complete these objectives in different ways, but so far I've not really seen that. It's pretty much find the key to the door and then you can go through it, but it's like a sprawling space station, and you can go in different directions and do things in different orders and that kind of thing. But I don't know. I kind of the glue gun, or is it the goo gun? Either way, that was cool.
The goop gun.
Yeah, that was cool for a bit, and I don't know. The novelty of that sort of wore off, and you don't really get other guns. I finally got like a shotgun, but don't get ammo for it. And I don't know. It's just a couple things, but the atmosphere is really cool. I think the story would probably end up being really cool. It's been interesting so far, but yeah, it's just not keeping me in so much. Whereas like Dishonored, I felt a little more like the world building maybe was just more interesting and more engaging. I don't know. So even though like I would still probably recommend Prey, I guess, if you're into those types of games, but just right now I'm just like,
those immersive sims. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like that though, because the enemies are few and far between, but your ammo is extremely few and far between. So it's you kind of strategize, and that's kind of where I got stuck. Is like there's these two phantom enemies that just are blocking where I need to go, and I don't have ammo, and I'm just like, I don't really feel like scrounging the rest of the entire game to find a little bit of ammo to maybe be able to beat these guys, and I don't know, it just seems like too much of a chore.
I think in terms of like psychological horror in video games, the first 2 hours of that game is pretty rock solid with that. In terms of like, what's happening, it's pretty good.
It's really cool because the mimics can be objects, right? And then all of a sudden, like the first couple like are legit jump scares that are generated just by they're not planned jump scares necessarily. Maybe the very first one, but after a couple hours, that shit kind of wears off on me because those enemies are so weak, and then I'm like, I don't really care. Like they jump at me again, and I'm like, yeah, that's over. But it's still a really cool mechanic and so on. But yeah, so I think I'm just gonna kind of move on from it. After like 8 hours, which is like probably halfway through it, so it feels weird, but I just gotta go.
You gotta hop into the Outer Worlds. We gotta
go.
talk about our different decisions and what happens, man.
Yeah, exactly. And then also, I was able to grab like 3 months of Nintendo Switch Online membership for free from Twitch Prime. Mm-hmm. I don't really get it, but
cool.
It worked. It worked.
I have Twitch Prime, or I have
Yeah.
Amazon Prime, so I might want to do that.
If you have Amazon Prime, you have Twitch
God.
Prime.
No, Jordan, please.
Mm-hmm.
Every damn
Exactly.
streamer pimping that out.
So yeah, I fired that up, and I've also been playing A Link to the Past on the SNES Nintendo Switch Online app, it's whatever they're calling it. Switch. A Link to the Past, actually, I've only played through this game once on the GBA back in those days. So it's not one that I'm super familiar with, despite it being like a lot of people's like favorite Zelda game. So okay, it's kind of like, oh yeah, like it's about time I go back to this one. After Link's Awakening, I was kind of reminded, like, yeah, this is a cool remake, but this is one of like the lesser of the 2D Zelda games. So I'm kind of been enjoying so far the first couple dungeons in A Link to the Past. So yeah. Fuck, there was something I watched that was important, and now I can't. El Camino. It's really good. The Breaking Bad.
There we
I'm
go.
going to call it an epilogue.
There we go.
It was excellent. So I for Breaking Bad fans, like, obviously you got to watch it. But I think it holds up.
So when I go through my rewatch of Breaking Bad, I should end with the epilogue.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll watch it as soon as I'm done with. I'm on episode 5 right now in season 5, so I'm close-ish.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Look at Jerrad finally polishing off Breaking Bad.
Polishing it up.
I'll say El Camino. Like, definitely, I wouldn't ever recommend anyone watch it without having seen the entirety of Breaking Bad. It's purely designed for fans of the show that have seen it all.
Yeah. I like that it takes place afterwards, though. It's not like some of this anime stuff where, like, a movie comes out. It's like, oh, it takes place between episode 18 and 19, but it's really not connected to the canon at all, so who cares? Yeah.
Goddamn.
And I'll lastly just say, like, it's also... I called it an epilogue, so I don't want to say too much, but I'll just say that, like, just keeping that in mind, that it's definitely an epilogue.
Got it.
That's all I'll say. Yeah.
Put it in the mind bank.
Yeah.
Jordan, what did you experience the last couple of weeks?
Mind bank. What have I been doing? Let's see. Okay, so if I mention it here, you can assume that I enjoy it unless otherwise noted. So for anime, we had the first couple episodes of My Hero Academia season 4, right, Jerrad?
Hell yep.
I would say off the bat, it's not catching me quite like season 3, but I'm certainly cool with what they're setting up and interested in, and obviously I'm down for it, right? Besides that, finished Samurai Champloo, started Watanabe's next series, Kids on the Slope, watched through Black Lagoon, Gundam Wing, and the movie Endless Waltz, and I'm watching Darker Than Black. Excuse me. As far as comics go, of course, there's a bunch of weekly issues that I went through, but other stuff, I read through Batman The Long Halloween just in time for the holiday.
Ooh.
I need to get to that.
Boy, oh boy, I think this might be my favorite, specifically Batman story. Outside of continuity, it's a 13-issue series, and it is like monthly for each holiday throughout the month in between a full year, right? Starts on Halloween, if that makes sense. And it's about these holiday murders, this serial killer called Holiday that's killing on different holidays with these little trinkets. So a lot of stuff from this is what built the Christopher Nolan trilogy, so that's really cool. Really enjoying it, and would recommend it to anyone, not even like comic book readers, especially just people that are generally interested in Batman. Totally cool. Really
Your Doms of
interesting
the
art.
world.
Yeah, sure, the Doms of the world, if you will. Read through Injustice Year 3. Tom Taylor left halfway through Year 3, actually. I didn't realize. So I'll have to wait till Injustice 2 for him to come back, I think. And definitely notice a difference there once he's gone. So that is unfortunate, but boy, was his first 2.5 years really dope. Read through the comic, or the first 11 issues of Birthright. Movies. Watched through Kevin Smith's View Askew-niverse, which is essentially the Chronicles of Jay and Silent Bob. They appear in all the different movies that are in Kevin Smith's connected universe. So that's Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, Dogma, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and Clerks 2. And now Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, but I haven't seen that yet since it's in theaters. Probably just wait until it comes out in a couple months. Really enjoyed this, though. It was a cool watch through on last weekend. And Jay and Silent Bob are fucking hilarious, man. A lot of goofy stuff throughout these movies. I could talk about each one individually, but I won't. But I enjoyed each one to some extent. Obviously, some more than others. I would say Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back and Clerks 2 are the highlights there. So,
what's the one
another
you enjoyed
rewatch
the least?
of.
Real quick.
That's a tough one. I didn't dislike any of them. I would say probably Dogma and Chasing Amy were my least favorite.
Okay.
Dogma is about Ben Affleck and Matt Damon being these fallen angels and trying to get back into heaven and like fucking all this shit up on Earth. And Chasing Amy is about Ben Affleck falling in love with this lesbian and like ending up having a relationship with her, even though she's really only into girls at the beginning. So definitely interesting movies in their own right, and I would say they're both good movies, but I like the other ones better, I would say. Another rewatch of Into the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I would say if you haven't seen it, it's a must-watch.
Agreed.
Love the animation. And then along with Kind of Funny's in review series, I watched Terminator and Terminator 2. And I'm glad that they are phasing out the rest of the sequels to jump to Dark Fate, even though I'll probably also wait for that until it's out of theaters. But these two movies are really fucking cool. The first two Terminator movies are definitely worth a watch. Definitely fucking cool movies, even if they are like old 80s and 90s sci-fi that, you know, obviously the effects aren't totally there or whatever, but nonetheless, super enjoyable, super cool. Star Wars Return of the Jedi and The Phantom Menace, Episode 6, and then back around Episode 1. I think that Empire Strikes Back is now my favorite of the original trilogy. Still love Return of the Jedi and definitely don't have it like the Ewok issue that everybody or a lot of people freak out about. Phantom Menace, I can now officially say that I think the prequels are bad movies that have some really cool parts and stuff in them, Star Wars wise.
Yeah.
Alien theatrical cut, super big shout out to the original Alien, must watch as well. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, The Goonies, liked both of those 80s movies enough, you know. Finally finished watching Mad Men as far as TV shows go. And definitely not my favorite series. I like stuff like Breaking Bad or Sopranos a little bit better, but different than those series for sure, and a lot of series. Very like introspective and existential type of thing with the whole Don Draper kind of life story. And then kind of etc. Finished Wolverine the Long Night. Funny, you remember I was talking about the like cardboard cutout detective female character? Remember that?
Yeah.
Spoilers for this, you know, decent podcast about Wolverine. It turns out she's an android, guys, is the reason that she is, you know, so difficult to love. One of her lines was, could you please turn off that music? I don't like music. I find it distracting. It's like, Jesus Christ. This one. So, it turns out she's one of the older models as opposed to her partner, who is a newer, more friendly humanoid model, right? They get along better with humans and can be more personable. So she's an older model. That's why she's like that. And also Star Wars Galaxy of Adventures on YouTube, which is... Boys, this is like the small beacon, maybe a New Hope you could call it, right? The small beacon of light when it comes to Star Wars animation, because Resistance is finally canceled after 2 seasons. It's pretty much garbage 3D animation. Forces of Destiny, the female-focused YouTube series, was just utter trash when it comes to animation-wise. And now we have Galaxy of Adventures, which are these short YouTube clips of this beautiful animation reimagining Star Wars moments throughout the galaxy, I guess you could say. And really well done. And like I said, the small beacon, a New Hope, if you will, when it comes to Star Wars animation, because it was looking real dark there. And, man, I just gotta call out Disney in general when it comes to their current, at least television animation, because Jerrad, I know you and I have talked about where Marvel's at, like with their Spider-Man series, their Disney XD Marvel series looked like fucking cardboard. And then, obviously, I've talked about Star Wars Resistance and Forces of Destiny. They're just like, it's bad animation. It's cheap bullshit, and Disney should not be anywhere near that stuff. So, hopefully, Galaxy of Adventures is a sign of what's to come. So,
my hope is they crank up that budget for Disney Plus, since it's going to be like under their own service. That's my hope.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
We've got Clone Wars Season 7, I guess, is what they're bringing it back for. And that got canceled when Disney took over in lieu of Star Wars Rebels, which was a much cheaper animation and did not look nearly as good. So we'll see how that goes. But finally, the game I played, which other than like some Mario stuff with co-op buddies, I would say I played a little bit of Blasphemous on the Nintendo Switch.
Okay.
Which,
curious about
Dom, we finally found the 2D Bloodborne I've been looking for. Now, Hollow Knight is a great game, and it's very close to 2D Bloodborne. But I think that you can really say that is what Blasphemous is. It has the whole... It's all about, like, the religious... It's... To me, the game really seems to be about, like, Catholic guilt, essentially. It's all about, like, Catholicism, even though it's not technically directly tied to Catholicism. It's like an amalgamation of Catholicism.
But you know what it's trying to say, though. Like you.
Oh, exactly. It's about that guilt for sure, and so it has a lot of the same like Castlevania-ish Victorian church vibes of Bloodborne, and it's this really cool 2D sprite work that looks like a 16-bit, like a really hardcore tribute to 16-bit games from maybe PS1 or whatever, and yeah, the quicker combat, like Bloodborne as opposed to Souls, and of course it's very, it has the lower enemy amount that you're meant to kind of like take more seriously and are certainly more punishing. So, yeah, I would say the music and the presentation are all certainly on point. And the story is very, has that same kind of mysticism that you get in the Soul series, but is certainly very interesting. And so it's a really cool vibe for sure. And I would say the combat is definitely there if you're into these kind of like brutal combat games, kind of sword combat. I know there's other types of weapons in the Souls games, but stuff like that. I would definitely say, Dom, you should certainly check it out. I know
it's
you're
been
a huge
on my
fan
list.
of the Soul series,
So.
and certainly I would say, Jerrad, you really enjoy obviously the Souls games and Hollow Knight, stuff like that. So I would say both of you guys would get quite a bit of enjoyment, I could imagine, out of this game.
I'm planning for it to be one of my holiday games, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I don't know how long it is. I've only played an hour or so, maybe 2. But yeah, it's a cool game, and I would even imagine that down the road we'll see you guys probably end up getting even more into this game than I do. So we'll see what you guys think of it in the future. But yeah, Blasphemous is certainly a game I can recommend. It's a cool one.
It's been intriguing ever since that initial reveal trailer came out. It's just like with the release of all of these big blockbuster AAA games in the fall, unfortunately for me, it's like, I'm going to play you, but just wait a little longer, Just wait a little bit longer. Sure. Yeah. If Impossible Lair, the Yooka-Laylee game, wasn't like there, this would have been the game that I replaced Breakpoint with, for sure.
Okay.
So,
I would say I haven't noticed anything performance-wise that you need to worry about, so I would probably say play it on Switch. Maybe that's just a me thing. You guys might want to play it somewhere else, but
I'll be
I think
Switch.
It works great on the Switch, and I haven't played it on handheld mode yet, but I think it'll be awesome for that.
I'll be Xbox One solely because of achievements.
Right, yeah.
But, yeah. Is there
Blasphemy! No, I'm just glad I got that in, the blasphemy.
Yeah.
Blasphemy.
I'm happy about that. That's good to hear, because that's one I've been curious about. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, Blasphemous is a recommended game.
Speaking of indie games, like I completely forgot Katana Zero came out this year. Dumb. Oh, yes, Jordan.
Yeah,
played
I
it.
never.
Yeah,
I never got to it.
Yeah, I can't believe that game came out this year too. It felt like a long year,
also on
but
the
a
list.
short year too. It's weird.
I think we've run out of games that I need to be asking Jerrad about, like Below and Katana Zero.
They finally came out, huh?
Like,
yeah, Hollow Knight too, which you mentioned.
Hollow Knight on Switch. Yep.
Yeah. We're going to talk about all the game delays that happened in the topic portion of the show, but let's get to some of this quickie news real quick. So it's called quickie news. Get it?
Quick
if you didn't know.
the quickie news.
So first up, it was revealed that not all Google Stadia Premier Editions will ship at launch on November 19th.
Whoa.
So if you remember correctly...
Unfulfilled orders.
Exactly. This is the pre-order for the Pro version of Google Stadia, and what was not talked about during the pre-order phase of this is that, people assumed, like with most big consumer products, that when you pre-ordered it, everyone would get it on the same day. But that's not exactly what's happening with Google Stadia, unfortunately. So the way it's going to work is that it's going to be set by priority based on purchasing order. So if you purchased the Google Stadia Premier Edition DOM an hour after they went up, and I purchased it the next day, you're going to be prioritized before me.
Mm-hmm.
So that sucks for people who
Way to
pre-order
go,
this
Dom.
thing, not knowing that. It's unfortunate that this wasn't, labeled as such beforehand. Google Stadia, I still believe in the actual tech of it. Dom, we've talked about, me and you got a chance to actually try it out with Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I don't think it's necessarily going to launch in the best place, but hopefully a year's time from now we'll see it shooting for the stars, because this kind of stuff is like it's stuff that shouldn't happen for a product launch, but it sometimes does happen. But yeah, I don't know.
I think it's at least good. I mean, I guess it's good from the perspective of, well, they sold more pre-orders than they probably anticipated, maybe. But anyway, so that's one perspective.
Well, no, there
wasn't.
There was a cap for their pre-orders.
Right. So even then, they couldn't
Which
fulfill
makes
that
it
cap.
worse.
So I guess you're right. But I'd say at least they're getting out in front of it and saying it now. Imagine if they never said anything and then people just didn't get their shit. And then it would be a way bigger.
Imagine
story.
if they were trying to produce an actual console. This is just like
a controller,
Google Chrome or a Chromecast dongle with a controller.
Yeah, that's the joke people had, is they're pitching
of
a service where you won't need the hardware, and thankfully, because they can't even deliver the hardware at a reasonable time too.
It's a bummer, because to me it's weird the way they're rolling it. I mean, a lot of people would agree. It's weird the way they're rolling it out, because the primary benefit, the value proposition is that you don't need hardware. You already have a Xbox controller and a Chromecast or a phone, then you're good. But they're launching it, so you do need the hardware, which is and then sometime next year it'll actually come out to where you don't need the controller or the Founders Pack or whatever. But it's that just seems backwards to me. That's your prime benefit, is save $300, don't buy a console.
Yep.
Except you have to at least buy this $129. It's a bit middling the way
I will say, as skeptical as people have been about Google Stadia, this is probably not the best thing that could have happened.
Well, yeah. And then think about their two premier games that they showcased: Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which is pretty much a failure for Ubisoft, and Doom Eternal, which got delayed. So it's they're not in the best position. I think
it's going to take... Because, I mean, when this launches, you're going to have a lot of people who bought this $129 pack that it doesn't work great, because their internet's not the greatest, or maybe it's fine, but not quite as good as they hoped.
But that's the problem, though, right? Is that Google isn't pitching it as an early adopter; they're pitching it as a product release. If they pitched it as you're going to be a beta tester, I think people wouldn't be as upset when it comes in it's not working. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, what it's going to take is enough testimonials of people, instead of saying, it's just there's too much input lag, and because there's going to be plenty of those complaints, right? And it's going to depend on what time of day you're playing, even, and a lot of variables, right, where you're at, of course. So it's going to take a lot of testimonials of I started playing Destiny this morning, and then at my lunch at work, I just literally clicked the app on my phone, and it's right there where I was, and the convenience of it is going to have to be, shown and heard from people, from all your favorite streamers or whatever it is. because that's like the value in all this. Right?
If you have Amazon Prime, you have Twitch Prime.
God. Real quick, too, I didn't put this in the quickie news. Shroud announced yesterday that he's joining Ninja and moving over to Mixer, which is huge because Shroud's one of the biggest Twitch streamers on the platform. People are assuming that Microsoft also, backed up the Brinks truck to him as well to come over to the platform. So it's a pretty big deal.
Shroud no longer has Amazon Prime, which means Shroud no longer has Twitch Prime.
Shout out Ninja, by the way, big old Detroit Lions fan. He's been repping lately, and I can appreciate that.
It's funny because his wife's a Vikings fan, so it's like that intermarriage rivalry.
Whatever, go Ninja.
Next up, some quick Xbox news. During an interview with Xbox, they were asked, like, hey, with Game Pass and even ID at Xbox, people wonder how much are indie devs actually getting paid? Are they making a decent profit margin working with big platforms like you guys? And Chris Charlo, who's the head of ID at Xbox, basically said that ID at Xbox has paid since 2014 when the project or division launched. It's paid indie devs over $1.2 billion, which is a lot of money.
$1.2 billion.
There's not a whole lot of news there. It's just cool to see that they paid indie devs quite a bit of money, and ID at Xbox is such a great program. It sucks that in 2013, PlayStation came out with this indie first mentality of we're like, we want you to play indie games on our platform, yada, yada, yada. And since then, they kind of moved away from that in favor of, obviously, the really good AAA first-party games. But with ID at Xbox, it's cool to see that, one of the big three. Nintendo supports indies, too, but I don't think they have a specific program, I don't know. It's just cool.
Nindies.
Lastly, not a whole lot of news here, but for the MPDs for September 2019, here are some highlights. In terms of the games selling for the month, number 1 was NBA 2K20. Number 2 was Borderlands 3. Obviously, it launched in September. And coming in at number 4, Link's Awakening, not including digital sales. So
there you go.
That $60 price point paid
Dude.
off.
Me 2-3 weeks ago. Yeah, this game is too expensive. It should be $40. Everyone.
Yeah,
nope.
The Legend of Zelda Nintendo label, man. People are willing to do it.
Nintendo's over there like, maybe we should charge
tax
$80
because they can.
Exactly. Year to date, NBA 2K20 immediately launched and became the number 1 best-selling game for the year. MK11 still holds strong at number 2. Borderlands 3 launched and immediately became number 3 for the year. Madden 20 is sitting at number 4, and Kingdom Hearts 3 sadly dropped all the way to number 5. So, there's that.
National Basketball Association 2020.
We knew this was going to happen. It's actually impressive that Kingdom Hearts 3 held on for as long as it did. I think maybe until June, July, it was still number 1, and then MK11 slowly passed it. And lastly, for the MPD numbers, NBA 2K20 has the best launch sales month for a sports game ever, breaking its own record from last year's version. And it passed Guitar Hero to become the 6th best-selling game franchise in history. So that's pretty cool.
Guitar Hero going
the way you structured those sentences, I thought you were about to say Guitar Hero was a sports game, and I was gonna just freak out.
Oh no.
Okay.
Freak out.
Let's get to these game delays, boys. We're gonna start off with the Sony one, and then we'll move on to the Ubisoft. So I'm gonna read through all this, and then we can give our thoughts on the actual delay. So, shortly after Jason Schreier and Nebelian revealed that their sources believed that The Last of Us Part 2 would be delayed on Twitter, Sony released a blog post confirming the news. Instead of releasing on February 24th, 2020, the game will now be hitting shelves on May 29th, 2020. An odd announcement considering
the
initial...
Pretty big leap at this point in the game, man.
Exactly. What I wrote down is it's an odd announcement considering the initial date was revealed around a month ago, right? We didn't wait.
Yeah, they had a big event, and they were like, hey, we've got a date for you. And then just basically a few days later, they're like, yeah, it's going to be months after that. And we're already pretty close to the original date at this point. We're not that far off.
In the blog post, Neil Druckmann talked about how they were finalizing a lot of parts of the game and getting ready to, finish it. But they were just coming up with so many issues that they felt they couldn't do it in enough time to reach the level of quality they wanted. So
it wasn't up to Naughty Dog quality, Jerrad.
And this is big. This shows the amount of power Naughty Dog has because this game was set to release before the end of Sony's fiscal year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
them moving it out of the fiscal year is a huge move. So, obviously, I know none of us are. We're upset that we don't get to play Last of Us sooner, but I don't think we're upset that
Yeah.
it got delayed because we understand what that means for the quality of the game in the long run, right? So,
Yeah, I would just say, well, for one, it lands right when I'm supposed to be in the middle of Cyberpunk, so the timing isn't ideal. But yeah, I'm with you though. Like, take your time, make it as good as you need. But
well, no, Cyberpunk comes out in March. This comes out in May.
I want to say Cyberpunk is April, but now I'm questioning my thoughts. Plus, I
I'll
play
check.
it slowly anyway.
Questioning
Yeah.
his thoughts.
But anyway, on the topic again, and we've talked about it before. It's like, yeah, obviously, it's better to delay the game and take the time you need, even though it's costing you money that you would
Sorry
be
to interrupt
making
you.
if it's
Cyberpunk
released.
is April 16th.
Okay, I thought so.
Do not question your thoughts, Dominic. They are
It's
correct.
a month and a half, Dom. If you don't finish Cyberpunk in a month
Dude.
and a half.
It's no chance. Cyberpunk's probably going to take me 3 months, assuming it's as big as Witcher 3, right?
Oh, that's a
8
very
months
good point.
of Cyberpunk.
Now that you put
And-
that into perspective, yeah, it's a very
Yeah.
good point.
And again, I usually go at a slower pace than a lot of people.
Yeah, very
but-
good point, yeah.
You're still playing Cyberpunk, Dom?
And I'm not going to rush it either. That's a game where I'm going to take my time. Just enjoy it, savor the flavor. But back to The Last of Us, though. The immediacy between when they first announced a date and then delayed it. It's like, yeah, okay, I get that's good that they can delay it. That's better. But maybe they shouldn't have announced the date to
In
begin
the
with.
first place. Yep.
And I know things change, and as like project management is difficult and it's hard to predict, timelines. But maybe just if you're not, 100% confident, just don't say anything.
Don't
But
you
I'm
think
sure
it's safe to
that's-
assume
Yeah.
because of that February 21st date was something maybe pressured by Sony and not necessarily
Right.
Naughty Dog? Yeah.
And maybe Naughty
I
Dog was like,
wonder when.
yeah, we might be able to do it.
Yeah.
But I guess you
when
can go ahead
when
and say
did they know that they weren't going to hit that date? Was it 2 days after this fucking event?
Right.
Was it 2 days before?
That's what I wonder.
Yeah. It's interesting too because we're in a place where Sony hasn't been at a major event in a while or done a major event in a while.
Lord have mercy.
So that pressure maybe led to this as well. Of like, hey, we're not at E3. We're not doing any Paris Games Week or Tokyo Game Show, and we're not doing a PSX. We need to have something to satiate fans. In the meantime, hey Neil, we're not solidified on a date yet. I know you're waiting to get closer to maybe the Game Awards to come up with something more, for sure. Can we maybe get a date from you now?
Right.
Yeah.
And then it's like that event was probably, planning was already like, far along, like
Yeah.
you're saying, and they needed something. I like the Nintendo approach as of late of fall 2020. Like, they could have said spring 2020, and then
Yeah.
at this event. And then as it got closer and, your timeline, you can see it better and predict better as you get closer. Then you start to narrow down. I think that's a decent approach because like it still gets people a little bit of excitement of like you're announcing a time frame,
I would go one step further and just wait till you have a date nailed down and then tell me 3.5 months, 4 months before. You know what I mean?
That's most ideal. I agree.
Yeah. Instead of that window, but that window is better. I don't know. It's a weird situation. On top of this, Jason Schreier followed up stating that this delay also bumped to the release date of Ghost of Tsushima. That Ghost of Tsushima was actually set to release around that May window, with Last of Us coming out in February.
Wow.
But because Last of Us got pushed, now Ghost of Tsushima got pushed. But he added onto it that it still is going to be a PS4 game. It might release cross-platform, but it's not going to all of a sudden, obviously, become
Man.
a PS5 solely game.
This is what I'm so excited to see how they play this out because like, why would they release it? Why put Ghost of Tsushima in a PS5 box? I mean, and a PS4 box, right? When it's PS5 is going to be backwards compatible. Why do that? It just, you know what I mean? I don't.
Well, double your sales, right?
But I don't
knows?
know. It just seems odd. To me, it's like I could see it more like it's a PS4 game, but then by the way, say Ghost comes out in like August for theoretically, right? And then PS5 launches in November, and at the PS5 launch event, they say, well, and some Sony first-party PS4 games will be enhanced for PS5, right? Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us Part 2 are getting texture upgrade packs or whatever when they're played on
Days Gone will be
PS5.
unbroken.
Right, yeah, whatever it is. Instead of re-releasing entirely, but do you want to re-release, basically do just that, but then put a new label of PS5 game on it? I guess it's arbitrary.
I think
Got
that'll
a shirt
happen.
that says Nintendo Switch on it.
I think it'll happen like in 2021 that we see the Ghost of Tsushima PS5. I don't think it'll release around the launch of the PS5. You know what I mean? Like later on when it's discounted for like $30 or whatever, they'll be like, "Oh, we're releasing enhanced version, a remaster for the PS5 in 2021 for like $40." You know what I mean?
It just feels. Doesn't that feel weird though? Like because you could already
They did
play
it with
on
Last
PS5.
of Us.
I mean, your character's
couldn't
gonna
play
have
it.
an
What
extra
you're saying is backwards
T-shirt to wear
compatible.
around.
That's your
Dom.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't play Last of Us on PS4 until they released the remaster. But for Ghost of Tsushima, PS5, you can play PS4 games. So you know what I mean? It
We
just
don't even
feels
know how all this is going to shake out yet.
Yeah,
so we
exactly.
don't know any of this
Yeah.
for sure.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm curious of. Yeah, is how they handle all these things.
So Ubisoft was looking over and like, "Oh, Sony, you decided to delay one of the most anticipated games of 2020. We're going to delay all of our games that aren't as highly anticipated, but people care about some of them. So we're going to do that too." So Ubisoft followed Sony in delivering some news about game delays in their investor call that took place on the 24th, which is the same day as Sony broke the Last of Us news. In the call, Ubisoft announced that Watch Dogs Legion, Gods and Monsters, and Rainbow Six Quarantine would all be delayed to the following fiscal year, running from April 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021. They clarified, saying Gods and Monsters and Watch Dogs Legion would both still release between July and December of 2020. So they're basically saying that Rainbow Six Quarantine might not even release in 2020, right? But they're confirming Gods and Monsters and Watch Dogs Legion will both still hit 2020. They said that 5 other titles would release in the fiscal year, including Ghost Recon Quarantine, Roller Champions, which is that game that had a beta near E3, if you guys remember, the sports rollerblading game. Just Dance.
Roller Derby.
Yep, Just Dance, obviously, and 2 unnamed AAA projects. One of those assumably being 2020's Assassin's Creed game, which we can all agree on. That's probably what one of the 2 AAA projects is. And one of the other things that's kind of heartbreaking for people who love this game, Skull and Bones was stated to not release before April 1st, 2021.
God damn.
Shit.
Yeah.
Damn. I forgot about that game, but damn.
So that
Shivering timers.
to me really states how much they took to heart the comments of it not having a story mode. And people saw that new thing that, remember they showed that new feature in 2018 of like, you can go to these little islands that are like docked areas where you can walk around and people are like, "Oh, look, it's a fully fledged single player game." No, those are just hubs.
This to me is like, oh, you thought that?
Yeah. That's 2021, man. That's 2 years from now. That's crazy. Yeah. It's not good for that. Last thing I wanted to read. So these moves were made for quality reasons, as well as Ghost Recon Breakpoint vastly underperforming their expected revenue. This is what they stated as the reasoning for the moves. And Yves Guillemot made a statement regarding the decision. I'm going to read you his full quote, okay? So his full quote is...
All right.
One second. My Microsoft Image viewer is...
Guillemot's quote,
I am Yves Guillemot.
including John Bernthal.
One second. Of course, when I decided to pull this... Okay, there we go.
We were very excited to have John Bernthal on the cast of Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Unfortunately, it sold 4 copies after all of the refunds.
I'm going to die at the ripe age of 60. Jordan's going to show up at my funeral with John Bernthal and a dog and a copy of Ghost Recon Breakpoint.
Is this your dream?
Is this your dream, Dom? Is this your dream?
Here's the Yves Guillemot quote now that my photos thing decided to work. At this stage, we have identified 3 main reasons behind the underperformance of Division 2 and more so Ghost Recon Breakpoint. First, it is harder to generate...
Wait, Division 2 underperformed?
Not as badly as Breakpoint, but it didn't sell as well as the first Division game.
Damn.
It still sold exceptionally well, but you remember how well the Division sold? Like, it's one of their best-selling games ever. First, it is harder to generate interest for a sequel to a live multiplayer game when prior iterations benefited from years of optimization. Consequently, we need to make sure there is more time between each iteration of live games. Second, Our strategy of introducing gameplay innovations in our games has had a very positive impact on our brands. However, to win over players, these innovations need to be perfectly implemented in order to offer an optimal experience. This has not yet been sufficiently the case with Ghost Recon Breakpoint. While the change of formula has been very well received by some players, with an average daily playtime per player of over 3 hours, it also has been strongly rejected by a significant portion of the community. Finally, Ghost Recon Breakpoint did not come in with enough differentiation. Jesus Christ.
I got you.
Differentiation factors which prevented the game's intrinsic qualities from standing out. We are tackling these issues head on and already are implementing significant changes to our production processes. We are confident in our capacity to adapt and evolve as we have done successfully many times in the past. So he's basically saying we can't release these games as close as we did to their original releases, right? The sequels. And he also said that the Ghost Recon Breakpoint wasn't different enough or didn't offer enough varied gameplay for players to feel justified in purchasing it.
And also, the new stuff was not optimized enough.
Yeah.
So basically, the game was broken.
Exactly. It's cool that he's owning up to it. It's obviously he runs the company, so he wants to throw in hey, players on average are playing for over 3 hours. They need to throw in that little bit of, good talk to the investors. But yeah, it's what we talked about with Last of Us being pulled out of the fiscal year. These are 3 games for Ubisoft that are being pulled out. Rainbow Six Quarantine might not be a huge revenue driver, and Gods and Monsters, to me, I didn't even know how that game was releasing in February when we saw a CG trailer for it, remember? That's all we saw. We don't even know what the gameplay's really like. But with Watch Dogs Legion, that's a huge one for them. People anticipated that game possibly getting delayed just because of the tech behind it, right? Of being able to control whatever character and bring them on into your crew. This is huge for them. This might have repercussions too, just like Last of Us getting delayed and bumping Ghost of Tsushima. With Watch Dogs Legion getting bumped, are they going to release Watch Dogs and Assassin's Creed within a month of each other? How are they going to handle that whole situation?
Yeah.
So, it's very interesting. Beyond Good and Evil 2 wasn't mentioned, but I don't know why it would be. We know that game's still a ways off, so it doesn't really surprise me that it wasn't mentioned. In terms of the other AAA game, because, there's 2 unannounced ones. Obviously, one of them is Assassin's Creed. I would bet money on that. Do you guys think that there's a possibility it's Beyond Good and Evil 2? Do you think it's maybe... I would love if it's a follow-up to Rabbids Kingdom Battle, right? A sequel to that. That would be pretty cool.
Well, Beyond Good and Evil 2 is not unannounced. It is announced.
So it's not... Sorry. It's not... I misspoke. It's not unannounced games. It's unnamed games in the call, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
So they said 2 projects we have yet to reveal, I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
Let's put a date on.
Yeah, the wording is very weird. But, yeah, I highly doubt, to your point, that it's Beyond Good and Evil 2. So, people hope it's Splinter Cell. Man, I don't know if a Splinter Cell game is going to happen at this point unless Microsoft pays for it themselves, because Ubisoft seems like they don't want any part of it. So, I guess out of those 4 games, it's actually not an interesting question because we'd all pick Last of Us Part 2. Yeah, I guess it's not too interesting of a question. I don't know,
Gods and Monsters.
A better question.
It's calling me.
On top of Doom Eternal, right, being added to this game this list of game delays, do you guys think there's a chance that another game early in 2020 gets pushed? I think... The likeliest candidate and the least likeliest candidate at the same time is Marvel's Avengers. And the reason I say that is because they've seen not a lot of great feedback for that game, right? So it could be likely that a game gets delayed for polish. The problem is that Square Enix's fiscal year ends right after that game gets released. And I don't know, for Square Enix's sake, if they could even justify moving that out for financial reasons out of there. You know what I mean? I don't know if they'd rather just bite the bullet and release it a little bit fudged up. I don't know if that game could get delayed. The other games we have, Animal Crossing, Dom. Nintendo usually doesn't delay games.
Already got delayed.
Animal Crossing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, technically.
Technically it already did get delayed.
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
They missed their window or whatever.
Yeah, their window. We have Ori and the Will of the Wisps. That could definitely get delayed.
Anything could get delayed.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, I know what.
Cyberpunk could get delayed too.
That could happen. Actually, and I'll put money on it right now, or some other fun thing to bet. Final Fantasy VII remake. That's like February, right?
Final Fantasy VII.
That shit is definitely getting delayed. Guaranteed it. Oof.
Well, that game's trying to come out right before their fiscal year ends too.
Right.
So
it's delayed as fuck, man.
Yeah. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be weird if one of the two Square Enix Final Fantasy or Avengers gets delayed.
Yeah, it's man, both those games are set to be big sellers for them too. So it's like, which one releases first? Final Fantasy, right?
Final Fantasy.
I wonder if because that'd be way too close. It'd be like a month away. We'll have to tune in and find out to see what else gets delayed. But
tune in and find out.
That's it for this week's Gamecast. Let's talk about what we're going to be playing. For me, obviously, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. I'm 20 Bs in, 28 to go. I don't know if I'll be able to finish it by next week, but we'll see.
Get them bees, bro.
Get them bees. Outer Worlds, can't wait to continue playing that. Gonna explore Edgewater and the rest of what's going on in that game. It's funny because we all know it's like not as big as a traditional Fallout game, obviously. I'm interested to see if when I'm finished with that game, if it's like, oh, this is the right amount of what I want from an RPG like this, right? Or if I do like knowing that there's more to do, even though I might not do the hundreds of hours of content. I'm really interested to see how that plays out. Because if it's like perfect, then there goes to that question of like, well, do they change the scope of the sequel when they do it, or do they just polish up the same kind of size of experience? Because that's also way more sustainable, coming out maybe every 2.5 years as opposed to every 5 years with like a Fallout or an Elder Scrolls, right? We'll
Especially
see.
when you're pushing something called Xbox Game Pass.
Exactly. And lastly, obviously, Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Going to play some more multiplayer and get that KDA up for Jordan, so I'm not a scrub anymore. And
fucking loser, bro.
And play through the single player. The campaign for that game's only about 10 hours, so I might be able to finish that between the Outer Worlds and Yooka-Laylee in the week, but who knows? I'm not stressing it.
Jerrad, since we have episode 3 tomorrow, I'd like to know what your thoughts on the first couple sods of My Hero Academia are.
Oh, so real quick, episode 1 was a recap episode. I like the way it was told through that photographer guy.
Yeah, I would say it had enough new stuff to not be a recap episode for me.
Yeah.
Like it had enough new footage.
And episode 2 wasn't pushing forward the narrative a lot, but that meeting between the two rival villain gangs popped off, and there was some really crazy stuff that I didn't expect to go down.
Right.
I'm talking loosely, so I don't spoil it for people.
Sure.
That was really interesting. I'm excited to see where things are going. I wanted to start picking up, right? Let the wheels get a little bit more traction, but I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be like, 24 episode season, so it'll,
Usually around 8 or 9 is when it really starts kicking off from what I've remembered from the past 3 seasons. It's around that point where, like, it, shit starts hitting the fan. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, it's pretty much it for me. Dom, Jordan, what are you guys going to be doing? Outer Worlds for Dom.
Worlds.
Outer Worlds.
Are you going male or female?
Shit, I don't know. Good question. Maybe I'll flip a coin.
Okay, Two-Face.
Oh, what's your gender?
Anything else, Dom?
Link to the Past. I might get back around to that.
Hell yeah. I need to get to that. I played Link Between Worlds and loved it. So I want to get to Link to the Past, yeah.
Between Worlds is excellent, that's right.
Playing them SNES games on that Switch.
Jordan, you're going to be tackling Blasphemous. Anything else?
Yeah, we got Blasphemous. And also, Jerrad, I am very excited because once we get done here in just a few minutes, I'm going to watch The Nightingale. Do you guys know what this movie is?
This sounds so... I might have it on a list of things I need to watch. The name sounds eerily familiar.
So, one of the directors... the director of one of the best horror movies in the last few years, The Babadook. She's an Australian director. I cannot remember the name for the life of me. But she is an Australian director who did The Babadook, which is obviously awesome. And
Spooky.
This is her follow-up. Very spooky. Yeah, some horror stuff for Happy Halloween, by the way, gentlemen, since we've got that in a couple days.
Oh yeah, because we're not going to be back before. Yeah, well,
we'll record on Halloween.
On Halloween, yeah, I guess, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
if we
Happy
can, we might have to
Halloween.
move it if we have plans
Yeah.
or something. But yeah,
We're gonna have to
see.
talk
Yeah,
about that
so-
one.
Anywho, for a good Halloween flick, like I said, read the Batman Halloween comics, and now I'm watching the Halloween movie, I guess you could say. But yeah, really excited for the follow-up to Babadook, and also Gendy Tartakovsky's follow-up to Samurai Jack with Primal, right, Jerrad? 5-episode animated mini-series.
give it a chance
That-
for people listening, because that first episode, so good.
Yeah, and I don't know if I mentioned it on the show, but yeah, I've kind of decided to wait and just watch full seasons of TV shows now. So I'm glad this was a quick one, and I can go ahead and hop in. Let's see if there's anything else here. I guess I'll just give a quick shout out to the new artist on Spider-Man is pretty cool. I know we love Ryan Otley here on Amazing Spider-Man, right, Jerrad? But this latest issue just had a new artist, so give that a shout out. Wish I had his name on deck, but yeah.
Shut up. The Nightingale's on Amazon Prime, it looks like. I might end up checking it out.
There you go.
Because if you have
There you
Amazon
go.
Prime,
Have you
Jordan,
seen-
you have Twitch Prime.
If you have Amazon Prime, you have Twitch Prime. Now, did you watch Babadook, Jared?
It's on my to-watch list, man. I have so many
It's
things
good.
that I'm like this, like, I need to watch these movies. I have a
now I
specific
can't
list for horror
necessarily.
movies for Halloween.
I can't necessarily vouch for Nightingale yet because I haven't seen it, but I know for a fact that Babadook is a must-watch. So maybe even try that one first.
Okay. I wonder if it's on any streaming platforms. I don't want to really buy
I
it.
think
It
it's
was
possible.
Netflix. That's
Yeah.
where I watched it, I believe, and I recommend it as well. If you like horror movies, it's worth checking out. It's pretty fucking spooky.
I'll do some
Very
searching and see if it's on
spooky.
any streaming platform. Is that it, Jordan?
Sure, I guess.
Sure, we'll go
I'll
with
be
that.
watching. I'll be watching Attack of the Clones this week, right? So
Nice. Best one.
we'll see. Like I said, it's now. I think that Phantom Menace is probably the best of the Star Wars prequels, which is not saying much, because I don't think that they are good movies. But we will see. It looks like it's going to be a competition between, Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, to see who goes for the worst Star Wars movie.
Worst movie ever. Thank you guys for listening to episode 163. We really appreciate it. If you want to follow us on iTunes, you can go there, search us up, follow us, leave us a review. It helps us out in the dreaded algorithm. On YouTube, if you search Controlled Interest, we'll pop right up. Subscribe to us. Hit the bell notification so you're notified whenever a new podcast goes up or any other videos we decide to do, because YouTube sub boxes can be pretty fickle mistresses. And lastly, on Twitter, you can follow us at CTRLINT, that's Controlled Interest abbreviated. And individually, you can follow Jordan at Malamotis, you can follow Dom at Dom's Oreos, and you can follow me at Jerrad_. Still working on it. We'll catch you guys next week. Bye.